Hey, good morning, everybody. Today I have a good friend of mine joining me, Amanda Patton, who comes from I was going to say finance, technology world, just like me. And we just want to talk today about what does it look like to be a female in the technology industry and how we kind of both stumbled into this world and not necessarily, at least for myself, I didn't go looking for it. It found me and how fun it's been. So thank you so much for being here, Amanda.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So if you can share just a little bit, how did you stumble into the technology world?
It's so weird to think back because I've often asked myself, how did I get here? This wasn't my, it's not what I got my degrees in. It's not what but it was a natural progression. And it started in software. I started working on the vendor side, more as, I guess, on a more of a sales type of role. It was an industry manager for oil and gas, and it was for IFS. And so that was my first foray really into the world of tech. And yeah, from there, it just turned into consulting eventually because you and I both know there's a lot of, I don't know, politics, favoritism, things that go on behind the scenes where vendors get advantages or not. Based on who people at the companies know. And I wanted to get away from all of that and get more into an agnostic view, which is how I ended up kind of slowly transitioning into consulting. But yeah, I think it's been 12, 13, 15 years. It went by fast. But yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of similar. Well, mine, it's funny because I started working at a manufacturing company and not really knowing what ERP was at the time.
Right.
I'm not fresh out of grad school, but not that many years after. And
Yeah.
in school they don't teach you anything technology other than Excel, and then it's
Right.
hey, good luck, go in the real world and see what everybody's doing. And this company they were small, they were like $1 million company. I came in for the finance, and then they have this system that, oh, we track inventory, we track how many parts are coming off the machine. And then I'm just the curious mind of, ooh, how does this work and what do these metrics tell me? And
Right.
that kind of started the process. And then getting into the consulting, similar to you, of going in and looking at ERP systems for clients. How are we selecting and all of that? So it's been really fun. And sometimes I wish I would have known about it earlier in my career
Yeah. Yeah.
because I probably would have gone that route faster.
Yes, me too. Had I known and had it been as available and prolific as it is now, I would have studied it. I would have gotten my degrees in that. I would have gotten more certifications and wanted to be more involved in STEM from the beginning. But back in my day, when we were making those types of decisions, it wasn't, I don't know, it just wasn't that prevalent for women, especially.
Mhm.
And so we all just majored in finance or business or, whatever, and then kind of found our way. Or something found us, like
Yeah,
in our cases.
exactly. Well, I remember even like in grad school doing capstone projects and things like that, but they were nothing to the degree what they are today. They were kind of silly in a way. So it's like, oh, we'll go on this computer, and essentially it was just building something on a laptop and
Yes.
calling it good.
Yeah, it was. I know when I was doing my MBA, which again was very general, it was in management, right? And so now they've got all these different, layers of technology and AI and all the different things going on. But back then they were more generic. I think I finished grad school in 2001. It's been a minute. But we did our capstone and it was really cool and it was wonderful. It was for a nonprofit, but we didn't talk about technology. It was just marketing. It was numbers, obviously. Finance was a huge component, but tech wasn't really a big part of it. And other than just QuickBooks and things that you've got to have, the essentials of things that you have to have, especially for a nonprofit, right? They're not
Yeah.
big. They're not out trying to spend $50 million on software. But when I was working for that software vendor in the beginning, I remember getting to know that system was overwhelming. And then I realized all the other ERP systems in the world and CRM and all the different things. And I was so overwhelmed by it, but intrigued because I am curious and I want to learn. And it looked like an insurmountable thing. Like I could never learn all this, which intrigues me, right?
Yeah.
That's what I like. I never want to be able to fully master it. I want to be in a field where I'm always having to kind of learn new things. And that's why I wanted to move more toward that agnostic as opposed to one vendor, because I started realizing, wow, these systems do insane, awesome things. And now it's mind blowing. But even back then, it was interesting. Yeah.
It is. And I think, like, even yesterday, I had a conversation with a friend of mine. We're talking about more ERPs for entry level. So there may be a $2 or $3 million company. And we were chit chatting briefly, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I never knew this was out here. I only knew NetSuite and the big guys that advertise on television, ads in the airport,
In
not
the airport. Yeah.
but the airport, yes."
Yeah.
So it was such a fun conversation, because it's like, hey, I've been researching this long enough, and to be able to share that knowledge, but then also being, well, I wonder what else has come out, this year, because I haven't really looked into a tier 3, tier 4 solution for those really small organizations. And so, yeah, to your point, it's fun to never fully master it, but you know enough to always know that you need to know more.
Yes, you'll never know everything. And now, and like you say, I mean, back in the day, it was just Oracle, SAP, Microsoft. It was just the same guys and, systems over and over. And now, over time, it's become much more modular, much more customizable. People are integrating all kinds of stuff into homegrown things. So there's so many variations now, so many paths, that it's overwhelming. And you've got to look at the scenarios, look at it from a TCO perspective, look at it from, functionality and kind of all the different components. And there have to be compromises made. And that's the hard part. That's where consultants come in, right? Is like, these are your choices. Here are the factors and the metrics that we need to look at. And yeah, it's overwhelming, but it's exciting, because it's ever changing, especially now.
It is. And I think that's the other thing that's really fun too, is even a handful of clients I've been working with this year, that they've gone out on their own and they've chosen a software and not knowing so many things, and an implementation that goes south, or
Yeah.
not fully understanding, hey, the solution can do all these other things for me. It was just never told. They were selling the shiny object. I don't want the shiny object. And I think that's the fun part, where we can come in and be the, a guiding light to them in a lot of ways, of, hey, you should be moving out this way and go after these things. And it makes it really fun.
Yeah. What's been fun for me over the years too, traveling with you, being in clients, all over, walking production floors, sitting in boardrooms, like all the places we've been and the projects we've worked on together, is kind of being devil's advocate, and pushing back, and calling the vendors on, some of the smoke and mirrors, the shiny objects. It's exciting and it looks cool, but does it actually solve for the business issues that we're talking about, for this particular client? And we're always advocates for the client, and very honest. And that's always, sometimes it's not good news, right? It's hard to hear. Yes, this will work for you, but you're going to have to customize it, and it's going to cost a lot. It's going to take longer. You need an additional internal IT staff to do all the things. And they're just sitting there disappointed, because that's a very different story from what a vendor may have
sold
them. And so trying to maintain good relationships with the vendors, but at the end of the day, protecting the client and telling the truth. And unfortunately, we've had front row seats to enough implementations that did not go well, that we can see the pitfalls a mile away. So I hate to call it cynical, but I mean, when you've got the experience, you just, you need a third party, and you need people who look at things from a practical perspective. And I always liked your style too, because you're just very easy to talk to, and you speak in plain language. And instead of some of these consultancies or even vendors that come in and can be a little condescending, or not really
jargon too.
Yeah, all the acronyms and ultimately the client knows their business better than anyone. And so having the respect to kind of listen and ask the right questions. But it takes time to learn how to do it, but it's fun.
It is. When I think too, some of the fun things we've done is going in and even playing devil's advocate with the client of you have this certain process that
Right.
you are so hell-bent on keeping, but does it really benefit you when you move to a new solution? Because now it's creating a customization or it's creating multiple steps that you don't really need.
Right. Yeah. And at the end of the day, the client is going to do what they want.
Mhm.
And we've seen that, right?
Yeah.
We've warned, we've mitigated, we've said we don't think that's the best course of action, but at the end of the day, it's their decision. We're there to support. Um, and later, sometimes they come back and say, "Hey, can you guys come help us?" You were right, type of thing. And
Which I
it's,
hate those calls
I
sometimes
know,
because I don't want to be that person, but it's like absolutely we will come in and we'll get
yeah.
this fixed for you. But yeah.
Well, we're also very gracious about it too, because that's a normal reaction. You look at, oh, we don't need to pay these consultants, or we don't need this, or we already know what we want to do. And we've been doing this process for 20 years and we don't want to have to retrain whatever the reasoning is. And it's fine. That's human nature to resist change, to, protect status quo. And so we don't get upset when people don't take our what we're advising. It's because ours is not based on emotion. It's based on algorithms and what kind of data came in from all the things, the surveys, the research on all the things, and then just experience. So yeah, there can be some difficult conversations, but I like it, and they
Yeah.
appreciate it in the end. They respect the fact that we came with, the whole picture.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, and I always think it's fun sometimes. I know we've been on certain projects where we have project sponsors on the client side that are very protective of the executive board, and they want it to be worded a certain way and
yes,
shown a certain way. And I remember one specific project we worked on, and we were both like, "Yeah, that's not going to happen. We're not going to show up this way." And to my own, I don't know what you would call it, personality of I'm that those are not in line with my values and morals, and
yeah,
so I will show you something to make you happy, and then I'm going to put a completely different presentation together for the executives that
right,
show exactly the truth of what's going on. And I think that's how we win so much trust is that
yeah,
part. Is like, I don't need to filter this out. I don't need it to state a certain story because wants to shelter these people and make them feel untouchable. I'm like, they're just like anybody else, and they
yeah,
need to know what they need to know to better serve their company.
yeah. And to our part of our topic, it can be intimidating. It isn't to me anymore, but it was when I was earlier in my career and younger to I hate to say the word stand up too because it sounds adversarial, but there are times where you do have to
Mhm.
push back and you have to state why what your rationale is behind your decision. But as a woman, I will say that pushing back on a room full of men in the C-suite was, and can be intimidating. And that's something that, it comes with time, it comes with age and wisdom and experience, that, you just start to feel confident because you've had the experience. And so for younger women, or anyone who's shy or, intimidated by that, or, and I think too, if you're 25 or 30 and you're in a room full of, established
Yeah,
executives, that's intimidating.
it
It can be
is.
intimidating, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But sticking true to your values and who you are and the North Star of why you're doing what you're doing. And you will have people who try to get you to bend the truth, massage the numbers, create a narrative that doesn't line up with reality. And that's not, for me, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Like you said, I want to sleep at night. I
Hmm.
want to know that if anyone ever needs to go back to our report or our recommendation, that it's based on the truth and not some executive's whim. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. It like early in my career with all of it too, getting in the room, and I had been around just because of the finance world in different C-suite positions,
Yeah.
but showing up very differently than when you're coming in for a consulting gig. And even when you're coming in for the technology, because for some reason technology seems more personal than finance numbers in a funny way.
Yeah.
But I've had a lot of those, and I've had ones where executives were, hey, you have nothing to add to this project. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it's like a punch in the throat, a bit. And you're like, oh my gosh, okay, let me recoup. And, and I think a lot of times my face unfortunately shows what I'm thinking instead of not saying the words at all.
Mine does, for sure.
I remember by the end of the week, the executive didn't apologize, but he said, oh, I saw that you added da 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 da. And I'm like, exactly. I don't need an apology. I need to see that you saw the value in what was brought to the table. And that's what it was. And I think to your point too, when they're a lot older and wiser and they've been doing this for 35, 40 years, it is intimidating because I get stuck sometimes of the imposter syndrome comes in. Well, you know more than me. And yes, on some things, and on other things, no, not at all. And I've had to learn to differentiate that over the years of here are areas of my expertise because that's all I do versus your areas of expertise because that's all that you do.
Exactly. And you just have to get to know yourself and also what you're willing to compromise on and what you're not. And you can have difficult conversations behind closed doors. And then maybe there's a polished version for the executives or the board, but it still has to have the truth because people are making massive financial decisions based on this information. So, and to me, it's like hiring, I feel like I'm coming down hard on people, but to me, it's like hiring a trainer and your trainer tells you stuff and you're like, yeah, I don't want to do that. And they're like, why did you hire me to give you advice? Because I'm the expert on nutrition and exercise, right? People hire consultants to come in. And then a lot of times when you tell them the stuff that they hired you to tell them, they're like, yeah, we're good.
I don't know.
It's like, okay, well, I mean, again, we respect your decision. It's your decision to make. And I think what's the Dunning-Kruger effect or whatever, like people who have been doing things for a really long time, if somebody's been running a company for 40 years, they've been doing it that way for so long that maybe they haven't been outside of their bubble. They haven't been out in the world to see all this new stuff that's going on. And so if you have consultants who are coming in with that type of information, it can be overwhelming. That's why it's dangerous to become a true expert in anything, because we have to always keep a student mentality. And when we don't know, just say, I don't know. I'm not sure. Let's find out, And
I think that's the biggest thing I've learned, because being a female in the tech industry, if I don't know something in the beginning, I used to think, oh, well, you're a fraud. I'm this, I'm that. Yeah. And getting to the point where I would just say, hey, I'm not quite sure. Let me go do some research on this. I'll get back to you. And how much more respect I gained for that. Yeah. And now it's very comfortable to say, oh, yeah, I'm not quite sure, but I'll figure it out for you and come back and we'll have a conversation.
Yeah. And we say all the time in consulting, kind of as the joke, that the answer to every question is it depends. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what it is, though, is it really does depend. Like they come in sometimes and ask these big questions. How much should we spend? What system's best for us? Those are layered questions with thousands of tentacles. And so it's why we go people, process, technology in that order. It's why we map processes. It's why we have to really analyze, and then we can come back and give you some recommendations or some answers. But a lot of people really do want a magic bullet. They want to put in X system and flip a switch and like, here we go, and that's just not the reality of it.
Doesn't happen.
Workout. No.
And I would even say it's as simple as QuickBooks, because earlier this year, I just moved somebody to a QuickBooks from another little system. And even that, they were thinking, oh, well, okay, within an hour, it should be good to go. And it's like, no, there's so many things to still do, even though this is an out-of-the-box solution with no customizations at all. But there's a lot that still goes into it, and just being able to, educate people. And it is those things. You don't know what you don't know. And from somebody's world that doesn't know that, they think, oh, I put my credit card in let's go.
No, that's
Which
it.
would be lovely if it was sometimes.
But I think too the complexities of all that and being honest, and we've done this with a lot of clients as well, where they say we want this, we want that. They see it, it's shiny, it's cool. They saw a demo on YouTube or whatever, but they don't need that right now. You really don't need that module right now. That's like a phase 3 thing. We've got to get back over here to the core functionality and the requirements that you're going to need to solve for the business problems that you're solving for. And also, a lot of people brush off change management. They brush off process reengineering. They're like, oh, sure, because they're so focused on the tech. And that is a huge mistake. And we've got to keep pulling people. Look, if you don't get your people involved and engaged, and we don't figure out who the detractors are and who the allies are, and we don't start working on that, no matter how good the tech is, if the people aren't on board, like it's not
going to work.
Just because you go live on a new system doesn't mean you are successful, right? Like, are we actually solving problems? Do we have buy-in? And the hardest part of any project is us, right? The people, the human aspect. Because tech does what you tell it to do, right?
Yeah.
You program it and tell it this is what we need, and that's what it'll do. It's the decisions that come to what are we going to tell the tech. We have all this people and process stuff, and we've got a lot of questions to answer internally, which is why a lot of companies skip over that foundational work that needs to happen. And that's not good. Oh my gosh, there's so many questions.
I know. I really like this one right here with mix, because this is right in line with what we're talking about. How do you stay sharp when the industry keeps evolving so quickly?
Constantly reading.
Yeah.
Podcasts, conferences, webcast, following influencers like you and like who you're talking to and what you're talking about. And just constantly. But I'm also cautiously use the word cynical again, but even with AI, like I know it's great. I use it a lot, personally and professionally. I think it's awesome, but we have to be careful, right? We need to really think about some of the decisions, and we all want shortcuts. We want to save time and save money. So like that, again, that's human nature. But we have to be really careful again with how are we training the model? It's no different from an ERP system. If you're not training it with the right data, the right processes and all that, it's not going to work.
It's not going to do anything for you.
Yeah. And I feel the same way about some of these shiny new things. Some things will be fads. Some things will be part of our lives now forever. And so I like to be devil's advocate on that stuff as well. Like, yes, there's a lot of new, amazing, wonderful things, and I want to keep on top of all of it. But I also don't want to go down a bunch of rabbit holes. I want to stay focused on, solving problems.
Yeah, and kind of staying relevant with the solutions that can do that, because I feel like every day I open up LinkedIn or I get some email about a new AI company, and it kind of gets to the point of, okay, well, these all are doing the same thing. It's just whose logo do I like better? And
Right.
Yeah, it kind of does that. And then really evaluating what can they do and would that benefit a client. And to me, it's gotten to be a little bit of overload of how much AI solutions are out there and how to stay kind of up to speed with those versus ERP, because ERP, we know the gist of how they all work pretty similarly. It's understanding the modules within them, the additional offerings that they have. And they're all so good about putting on monthly webinars or sending newsletters about, hey, we have this that we're adding to our solution, or even the conferences that they put on. And
I love this.
Yes. I think it's so fun.
I get to go to those, like as an advisor. You get to go see the product roadmap before it comes out. Mm-hmm. You get to kind of really understand, because you have to know what they're all working on all the time. Yeah. And so getting invited to those things and taking part of them is awesome. You learn so much, and you get a lot of case studies. But all of a sudden, every system in the world has, embedded AI and AL, and all these old ERP systems are like, it's like, what is it doing though? Where does the data come from? Is it ethical? Is it safe? How is the data protected? There's so many questions beyond Wow, that's really cool. Because a lot of people make decisions on, wow, this looks really cool. We want to use that. But that's been teed up in a demo environment where everything has been customized and perfected. That's not necessarily what you're going to end up with. And so,
Mhm.
again, sound like a party pooper, but this is the truth. It's the truth of
That's just what it is.
you have to be, you have to really ask a lot of questions and ask the right questions before you sign or get too far down the road with any vendor or solution.
I think so. And I think the one thing I see too is AI is such a, I don't know, the trigger word for everybody to use to help gain a sale and
Yes.
to say that their solution offers AI. And I'm like, congratulations, it's cool. I'm glad it does, but how is this benefiting the overall use of the
Yeah.
solution and how does this benefit you as the client?
Right. And what does that actually mean? What does it look like? Show it to me. That's because we know people who have created some really cool AI tools. And the cool thing about that is I can go play with it. I have played
Yes.
with that model and put in different scenarios and checked it against 4 months of consulting work to see what kind of systems it comes back with for a short list. And those are the types of things we need to be experimenting with. A lot of times AI really is just a buzzword and it's technology that's been used for decades now. It was called
Yes.
something different. It looked different, but it's the same.
And
It's
I
just
think that's
being
what people
repackaged.
forget.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been around for quite a long time. And even I had a guest a couple weeks ago, Mason, who
Yeah.
has been doing AI stuff before it was ever heard of.
Yes.
Essentially, in the background, this is what all these programmer people do. And to be able to say, hey, it's been going around a long time. It's not something that pops up overnight like everything wants you to think of, hey, overnight AI just popped up out of nowhere. And it's like, no, it's been
Yeah.
around for
Yeah.
just a bit. It's a good
Exactly.
one. Put this one here. What's your approach to prioritizing when everything feels urgent?
Ugh. I wish I had an answer to that. Being anxious all the time. I tend to be anxious a little just in general. So that's not saying much, but you know what I've really done is you've just got to be so organized. And people don't want to hear that.
Mhm.
Probably a lot of people don't. I'm naturally orderly. I need structure. I need everything to be neat and tidy. It's very natural to me to be organized. And when you're organized, I can see when things are due, what is needed. We work off of really detailed project plans. We've got Gantt charts. We've got charts and stuff coming out of our ears to go, day to day, week to week, milestone by milestone. We know well in advance when something is getting off track or off budget. And so for me, that's what I do. I use the tools that we use for projects. I mean, you
Mhm.
have to. And if you're not organized, at least putting together something, color coding on your calendar or in a spreadsheet somewhere to send you automated reminders. I don't know, but otherwise you'll just be spinning all the time because everything is urgent to everyone all the time. That is just the nature of the business that we're in.
Mhm.
And if you're not careful, you will completely forfeit your personal life and
Oh yeah.
just be on all the time. And, you know, but in terms of things that are urgent, yeah, what does urgent mean? And we look at that from a milestone perspective. If we're getting ready to go live and data's not ready, or some things really are urgent. That's urgent.
Yeah.
Other things, not so much. And we do that. We do a lot of that work too of helping clients to prioritize. Like earlier when I was saying they want this from day one, you're not ready for that. We're over here crawling. That's in the running stage. We have a lot of stuff to do before we get there, and having to kind of push back and help them prioritize as well based on dates, based on internal capacity, based on budget. Those are the things that kind of drive. It's like project management, right? You've got quality and scope and money and timeline and all that. And if you try to go too fast and fulfill everything at the same time, the quality is going to suffer. So
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. What about you, Christy? You're super organized too, though, like crazy organized. Which
Yeah. I think it's the same thing as you. I color code things.
Mhm.
And then I like working with clients and going through and really evaluating the task and saying, okay, is this urgent because it depends on something? Is it urgent because you just want it to be urgent? Is
Right.
this urgent because whatever the reasoning is? And then finally, and then getting to a point where you have those conversations and saying, actually, no, this could be a yellow, it's not red anymore, or it's green because we can do this in a couple of weeks or in a month. It's not urgent, but not sometimes understanding the full picture on their half of
Yeah.
thinking something's urgent when it's not. And when you have those conversations, it comes to the point of, oh, wait a second, no, we're good. This isn't urgent anymore. And I think that's something that's so key in all of this is good conversation. And that's something that
Huge.
I think people lack in general these days. They don't know how to have decent conversations, to talk about hard things, to talk about things that make them uncomfortable. And I think that's something that we are good at when we go into these boardrooms. And it's not necessarily stirring the pot, but it's getting people to talk and think about things from a different perspective that they may not have been forced to think about in the moment. And you get really great outcomes from it
Huge.
too.
Huge. And like you bring up a really great point of the psychology. Some people just, their heads are on fire all the time. Everything's urgent, even if it's not. Like, so if you start to understand behaviors and psychology and personalities and spend enough time with people, we'll say, oh, look, Jeff's freaking out again. Okay, somebody call, maybe that's just in his nature, but you still have to have the conversation. And other people won't raise their hand that things are going wrong, and they should have 3 months ago. And now all of a sudden, so you've got all along the spectrum, human beings handle priorities and stress differently. And so learning, like you say, having conversations, understanding people on a personal level. And then we understand, being program and project manager types, that everything, well, we're always focused on the critical path. Otherwise, you'll just get thrown all over the place. But there are dependencies. And if this doesn't get done on time and properly, all of these dominoes will fall. But we're doing weekly status reports, red, amber, green. We are mitigating, we are calling those things out early. So for me, that's really how we know what a priority is. And maybe they bring something up and I jump to a conclusion. That's not that important right now. But when I talk to them, like you said, they give me a little more context and I start thinking, oh, maybe this does need to get moved up in the project plan. Maybe it is a little more urgent than we thought. So being able not to admit that you're wrong, but being able to admit that, okay, maybe we didn't give this task enough time. Like data is a great example, right? We thought it was going to take this long. It's taking that long. People here are busy. They have day jobs. We're not able to spend as much time on it as we thought. So we're falling behind, those types of things. So yeah. And it's like whack-a-mole. There's never any project where everything's going right at the same time. There's just always going to be something.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
it's because it's complex. It's so many hands in the pot,
Yep.
working and getting things done. And people work at different rates. They work in different environments. And you're pulling everybody into something that, while they may not all be urgent requests, it's a very high stress environment to be in when you're doing an ERP implementation. Even if you're on the path of, hey, this is going to take a year to do, it's going to be a year of a lot of hard work.
It's just hard.
It's
And
hard.
that's another thing that we always say up front. When you were talking about, it's not stirring the pot, it's asking questions that have gotten them to this place in the first. Why are we here? What are we doing? How did things get so messy? How do we prevent that from happening in the future? And so we do surveys, or we do an executive alignment session that has some prompts. And guess what? The people around the table have different answers to the questions. This is where the misalignment begins. And that filters all the way down through the organization if we don't nip it in the bud early. And so then we have to just start telling people, this is going to be hard. Yeah. We're here with you. We are, but I think people think they're going to send some files over, someone's going to flip the switch, and you're going to have a new system in a year. And it's messier than that, just like life in general. And that's, you know, but people are happy that you're honest with them, because when things start
Yeah.
getting hard, they're not like, why didn't you tell us? This is so
Mhm.
hard. You know, they're like, yeah, we knew this was
We
it,
were
but
prepared.
it's
Yep.
worth it. It's worth the outcome. We're just going to keep pushing through as a team. Yeah.
Mhm. And I've seen it be very helpful too for cultures in organizations where it's not, they don't usually have free reign to speak in what they really think or feel about a process,
Yes.
or where they stand with a level of, hey, I'm a little anxious about cutting over and going live or this or that. And I think it's been really neat to be able to bring that into the organization and not necessarily change the culture of the company, but starting something that then they can choose to utilize later on down the road or start implementing those types of conversations. So it's like we're kind of the, I don't know, we bring the tools to be able to
Yes.
help facilitate those conversations.
Yeah. And I don't I don't want to say the wrong thing here, but I'm going to say what's true to me. Women, this is a broad brush I'm painting with here. I understand that. Women, though, in my experience, are typically they want to empower and are, God, I'm going to get in trouble for this. I'm just less threatened if somebody has to have a hard conversation. It doesn't threaten my ego. It doesn't make me feel like you're attacking me or telling me I'm not doing a good job. It's a conversation. As long as people are bringing with respect,
Yep.
then let's feel comfortable. And I also, I don't know if it's a lady thing or what, but you're like this too. You advocate for people,
Mm-hmm.
and you also help them advocate for themselves. We bring tools of, look, if this is an issue, you've got to bring it up to your manager. You need to bring this up in this next session, workshop or whatever. And you see certain people, it takes them a long time to
It
speak up,
does.
and others talk the whole time and dominate the conversation. So it's again coaching, advocating, helping. Ultimately, they need to advocate for themselves, because eventually consultants and vendors are going to go away. And
Yeah,
that,
you're only there for so long. And
right.
then you have to be able to take what you've learned and start putting that into the daily.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kyler,
Really
women are
important.
cooler.
Tyler's, yeah.
It is true.
Yeah.
But most of the executives, I mean, just looking at the demographics of whatever, are men.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've been in with companies, working with companies where some of the executives were women, and again, this is a stereotype. I understand that. I'm not saying it's always true, but in my experience, females have felt more collaborative to me, and less combative. There's a little more of like, let's work together instead of let's compete. And so, and we've had, I'm thinking of one in particular, a guy, CFO, who's incredible. His emotional intelligence, the way he cares about his people and his company and the legacy, is like one of the best I've ever
Yeah.
seen. So I'm not saying that men don't do that and that they're not capable. I know they are. But we are talking about women in tech. So, that's, just be more collaborative. Don't be threatened. Don't work in silos. Start to be willing, to help each other and work together. And if you work in a competitive environment or a toxic environment where people step on your throat, then that can be scary. And so you have to know the environment you're in and keep yourself safe. And obviously, don't put your job at jeopardy by speaking up. But there is a way to do it. And maybe it's a channel that you've got to figure out internally. Maybe it's not directly to your manager, but in these ERP implementations, if communication isn't good, it's just, it really can get messy.
Yeah. And very quickly, too, because it goes back to being that high stress environment and people are maxed out on every level of emotion that they're feeling.
Yep.
And you have to have those conversations, whether they're a room of everybody just complaining for the first 5 minutes to get it out and then getting
Yeah.
your plans together and going.
Yeah.
sometimes you have to have that. And I
Yeah.
found that to be important. I know you and I have had those conversations even sometimes too, where it's like, hey, I'm at my wit's end on something because I have so much personal going on. Now it's starting to bleed into work stuff.
Yeah.
Let's just get it all out. All right, focused again, ready to go.
Yeah. And we always, every time we meet, we spend the first 15, 20 minutes just kind of catching up on personal, venting, or maybe celebrating wins and all of that. And then we can, get into the conversation. I think that's really important. And I think you and I both do a good job of that. We take the
Yeah.
whole person. It's the whole person. It's not just at work and this project. There's a lot of things going on, and we just want to be aware of that and be sensitive to what people are experiencing. And it sounds woo woo. I used to think that giving teams names and having t-shirts and trophies and pizza parties, and I was like, oh, please, let's just do the project. Like, who has time for that? I understand now. It's
fun.
it's the people part, right?
Mhm.
And yeah. So I'm evolving as a person too, because things that I used to think, if they're not data driven, why are we doing them? That was sort of my project mentality. And now I understand it's so much bigger than that,
Yeah.
Because if your people aren't happy and you're not treating your people well, they're probably not going to treat your clients well, right?
Mhm. And I think mine has always been more relational just because of how I grew up being in a family business and
Yeah.
seeing how, like, my grandpa was one of those, his point was he wants to know every employee. He wants to know, their kids' names. He wants to
Yeah.
know, hey, what did you guys do for vacation this year? And really get to know them on a personal level, which I think is really, really cool because everybody wants to be known. And
Yes.
with most clients that I've worked with, they're open to having that too, where we're able to go to lunch and we learn, hey, you have 2 dogs and you just went and climbed the Grand Canyon with them, or whatever it looks like. But
Yeah.
it's kind of cool to be able to share in that, and you see the human side of things. And I think that's where you can really start to build a solid foundation of trust.
Yeah.
And that helps overall with the project when you have to have hard conversations, or when you want to celebrate things. I think too, the celebration comes at a much more near and dear level, in a way of like, we're all really feeling it because we're in it together.
Yeah. And I hate to call it trauma bonding, but like, that's a part when you go through something really hard with a friend or with your family or with a group or whatever, you are closer. You had to overcome some really hard stuff together. And while it wasn't pleasant in the struggle, it does make you closer. And the collaboration and all the getting to know people on a personal level. If somebody lost a parent or a dog, or they're going through a divorce, or like understanding that that whole person is there and we can help with one another. And you'll get a lot of pushback on this kind of stuff as a woman in a corporate environment. You will. I mean, it's frowned upon. It's old school. It's that old school mentality thinks that all of that is fluff. It's nonsense. It's a waste of time. If they don't like it here, they can quit. This very autocratic, like old school type of management. And that works, I guess, if all you care about is the bottom line. But if you care about longevity and tenure and really building a legacy and keeping people around, you got to take the time to invest in your people. And like you say, people just want to be known. And that is not, a lot of people think that treating people well is not holding them accountable or it's being easy on them. Not at all.
No.
We are hard on people. Like, we are like, why don't we have this? We need this. This is due. So it's not letting people off the hook. It's just balance, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're not robots, but we can't be personal all the time at work. We're not trying to be personal at work either. We've got to have a balance of, being able to bring your whole person to work. And that lets you show up for your project in the best possible way,
It does. And that's one part that's where I find that is one of my favorite parts of doing the projects too, is getting to know the people, getting to know the team, and kind of going from there. And it becomes an overall team experience because we become part of that. And
Yeah.
to go through something with them for a year or longer, depending on what the project
Yes.
looks like. But yeah, it's really fun.
It is. And we you become part of their organization almost. Like I know you do, I do too. I still talk to CFOs and
Mhm.
CEOs that I worked with 10 years ago. It's just you want to check in, see how it's going, and understand what all is going on with them. And we become trusted advisors and friends basically. And
Yeah.
it's just a really cool thing. You know, that's another reason you can't do anything that's not on the up and up,
Mhm.
because that's, my name is now attached to that. So if I was dishonest, or I left some stuff out of the report that they didn't want the board to see, that
Mhm.
I don't want that kind of stuff to come back.
No.
And sometimes it's hard because you have to deal with hard news or hard conversations, but you're either going to pay now or you're going to pay later. And it's better to just deal with it up front than to have it go wrong post go live. And then you've got some disaster on your hands, or
Exactly.
lawsuit or whatever.
Yeah. And I think too, it's been fun because I have a handful of clients I've worked with that have become friends, and we'll meet up and go to lunch if I'm
Yeah.
in their area or they happen to be in mine. And that's been really fun to be a part of. And I know um, that's something I've always liked. I want my clients to be, lifetimers versus
Yes.
whether I'm only working with them one time and it's just I continually check in with them over the
Yeah.
months and years to come, or they come back around eventually one day and it's like, hey, you know what? We've outgrown everything you've done. It's been 5 or 10 years, and we need to go around this again, and
Yes.
we want to work with you. So I think that something like that is always my goal.
Yeah. And it all connects for me. And like I say, the older I get, the more experience I have, things just make a lot more sense to me now. But um, I've left work environments where it started to feel transactional rather than relational. I
Mhm.
don't like how it makes me feel. There was a long period of time in my career where it was about the paycheck. I had a kid to support, I had a mortgage I had bills to pay. Later, it's more. It's, am I comfortable psychologically? Do I feel
Mhm.
good around these people? Do I feel good about what I'm doing? And that's just, you know, if we come in as consultants or advisors and we make it feel transactional and not relational, one, you're not building a relationship. You're forgettable. They're not going to come back to you when
No.
it's time to do more work. And it's just flat. It's boring. It's more fun to get to know people and engage and all that kind of thing. And ultimately, if you are the type of person who only cares about the bottom line or the success of the project, guess what? It also helps that too.
Yeah,
So,
it does.
yeah.
Well, one quick thing before we kind of wrap it up. What
Yeah.
is something that excites you most about the future for women in tech?
Uh, so many things. Well, I have an adult daughter and she is in technology. And so I think of her.
Mhm.
And what I think is access. That's probably what excites me most. I see middle school and high school STEM programs. I see pipelines into out of high school into community colleges and or four-year universities. Maybe college isn't the track for everyone. Maybe it's some kind of trade in technology, whether it's coding or AI, and then a few certifications that are going to help you really differentiate yourself. But to me, it's this creative, open access,
Mhm.
and even in consulting, some of the big consultancies have dropped their four-year degree requirement.
Yeah.
And so I've seen a lot of that just focus on STEM in general. So technology obviously is a huge part of that. And I think women are we're involved in the conversation a lot more now than we used to be. Back in the day, I'm almost 50 years old. So when I was growing up, girls didn't do stuff like that. You were teachers and you did other things,
Nurses, all of those things.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is wonderful. Those
Yeah.
are beautiful professions, but I didn't remember being given a lot of options. And
Mhm.
had it not been my mom working for a bank, I wouldn't have seen women doing stuff like that. And so, yeah, to me, it's the access. It's the fact that little girls, my little nieces, know that they are welcome
Yeah.
and invited and smart. And not only that, they have access. There are all these pathways being created for people. And the one other thing I'll say, if you have access and you know people who don't, use your access to invite them in. a lot of people could do amazing things if only they were given access. And
Yes.
so people brought me on, people gave me access, and I want to do that for other people, particularly women. That was a long answer. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. No, but I would agree the same thing. And that's kind of goes back to what I said in the beginning of I wish I had known about these options when I was in school.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I've talked about it multiple times, I'm very against education in a lot of ways.
I know.
But
I know.
I think there's so many other ways to do things and do it well.
Yeah.
But even with school, going to school and going through accounting, it was, well, you have to be a tax CPA or you have to be an audit CPA. You don't have other options. And then I'm like, well, I don't want either of those. That sounds terrible. I don't have the right personality for this. I like people. And not knowing until later on by talking to people and networking and having those conversations of, why aren't you a CPA? I'm like, well, I don't like this. Oh, okay. Well, have you thought about this? I've noticed too it's really funny when working with vendors and some of the implementation individuals, how many of them came from an accounting background and they stepped into technology because there's still that attention to detail and all of these inner workings of how things go, but you're not so stuck in this kind of siloed world of we don't do anything else. And I think that's what's been really fun for me is kind of marrying those two together and doing all of this finance stuff, but then also really layering it heavy with technology and how are we utilizing technology in our accounting departments, in our finances, all of that.
Yeah. And like you're saying, I went to undergrad and did my MBA because I had to. I thought I had to. It's a ticket to ride. If you want to get on this ride and go be part of that industry or make that kind of money, these are the requirements. And that is unfortunate because a lot of people, like we were talking about, don't have access. But that is not really how it is anymore. People are doing their own things. They're getting certifications. They're starting their own businesses. They're figuring out ways to carve out their strengths and make that a business and, you know, get paid for it. So I'm not encouraging in either direction. People have to make their own choices, but it's not like it used to be. There was just sort of this one path before, and now it feels like there are hundreds or thousands of paths. And that's really exciting for, you know, girls to just be invited into the space that we weren't invited into quite, you know, not that long ago. And I think the other thing too, your experience in finance and accounting has brought unbelievable value to clients, even though that's not really what you're there for on our projects. It's really important. And you're sort of, so you're the consultant and you're running the project, but you're also the subject matter expert, not only on accounting and finance, but also how the systems interact with those functions. So yeah, you can do something for 10 years, get really good at it, and then pivot it into some other thing like accounting and then getting into tech, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's what's so fun. Cause like you said, it goes back to the access of that too, of even later on of, oh, there's all these options out here and I have the ability to go take one of them.
And the reason that there are so many options, like you're saying, is because we talk to all these other people, vendors, like at conferences and partners and the clients themselves. And they're like, yeah, have you ever thought of this? Or, oh, my sister-in-law is doing X. And then you're just constantly seeing people doing, you know, but at the end of the day, like it says in the chat, it does feel like a requirement. There are still a lot of barriers. And so we've got to figure out ways to get brilliant minds, people who want to be in tech, in the door, right? And let them prove their worth, because I've worked with people who don't have degrees and are definitely better at technology than I am.
Yeah.
So
I've come across a lot of people like that where you're just innately born with these talents and it just makes sense for them. Yeah. It's really cool. Well, thank you. This was fun. And I hope everybody enjoyed the conversation. If you have other questions, feel free to drop them in. We can get to those. But again, thank you for your time. This was awesome today.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was good to see you.
You too. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.